Here in the northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks, where kindred souls gather to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as a February room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for Composite Development's fly rods and fishing accessories. Tech, precision, ingenuity, legacy. Go to cdfishing.us and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Here's your host, Lauren Carnop, and this is the February Room.
So, on our episode 42 with Jeff Perrin, Jeff loses his boat, and in the midst of all the craziness, he has a buddy help shuttle him. And that shuttle driver is Ron Kaye, who also happens to be my guest today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ron.
Well, thanks for having me, Lauren. I really appreciate it.
Well, and that was just a crazy adventure. And we had talked prior to our podcast. You are fairly new to fly fishing, but also you have decided to dedicate 1,000 days of fly fishing, which is basically kind of equivalent to 3 years of fly fishing. And and I know with that much time being spent on the water, you have some fishing stories, and we also talked about some maybe near-death experiences, and I can't wait to hear one of those stories right now.
Well, yeah, the 1,000 days is basically since April of 2012. I'd never fly fished before that, and so since that time, truthfully, I'm probably at 975, and we can talk later about how I keep track of it. But as far as the near-death experience, I think this is a cautionary tale for anybody who fishes lakes. I was up at Hosmer Lake, right up in the Cascades, up from Bend, about 45 minutes from my house. Currently live in Bozeman. My wife and I moved here 3 months ago. But it was a summer day, I think it was July, and there were thunderstorms as there can be in the afternoon, but way in the distance. Didn't think a thing about it, didn't see any lightning, really just heard some thunder way out in the distance. Well, I was fishing in a spot, wasn't doing great, so I thought I would move. So I rode over in my little pontoon, about 10 minutes to another spot, and I'm fishing away. And all of a sudden, I hear what sounds like a sheet, a bed sheet, tearing. And in like a 1/100th of a second, I looked up and I saw lightning coming down almost like in a horizontal course, and then straightening out. And seriously, and this is not an exaggeration, it landed within 10 feet of my boat. I saw the bolt of lightning hit the lake. The water turned turquoise. I could see to the bottom, which is only maybe 8 or 10 feet. And I actually thought it hit my boat, my anchor, something. I actually thought I was dead. I really did. I really thought to myself, this is okay. I must be dead because I just got hit by lightning. But I did.
Wow. How loud was it?
Oh, my God. I mean, actually, you mentioned Jeff Perrin. He was on the upper lake that day, and it was at about 2:30, and I had texted him when I got off the lake, and I said, did you see that bolt of lightning come down? And he goes, oh, my God, it was incredible. I said, yeah, it almost hit me.
So what happened once it hit the water? I guess I'm always so curious. So when lightning hits the water, and you said the water turned turquoise,
yeah.
There's like a big rush of waves?
No. It was like a laser or something going through it. I mean, it kind of had like a weird smell to it. I could almost smell like the ions or something. And then, of course, that was just, I rode off that lake like, I think I must have been going 10 knots with my oars. But, of course, I go home only to Google lightning and all this stuff to find out that if it's within 25 miles of where you're fishing, get off the water.
Wow. So did you not even know that the weather was going to turn? Because I do know that like sometimes you're like, oh, look at outside. Because actually my sister and I this last summer, we were going paddleboarding, and the weather forecast said it was going to be totally fine. And all of a sudden, we're on the river and like torrential downpour, and we're just paddling. And we just got off onto our paddleboarding adventure, and we had to stay on this, like, like kind of like the islands or the tributaries, like this little muddle area. And I remember thinking, we're still going to be screwed. Like, if the lightning hits, we're going to die.
Well, for me, what I didn't realize is that I didn't see anything above me. When I was, rowing around the lake, everything to me seemed way out in the distance, but obviously not.
So did you even catch any fish that day? Or was it like the very beginning of your adventure?
I caught fish that day, but let me just tell you something. That is not what I remember.
Yeah, the lightning.
Oh, I mean, it was a near-death experience as you described it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess other than not the fact that you shouldn't be on the water when the weather's turning bad, what do you do, though, if you do catch yourself unexpectedly in the water? Because you said you went back and you kind of Googled, like, what do you do? Just try and get to land as fast as possible?
Well, I think, you're supposed to, not be under trees and be in flat areas. You just have to act appropriately with all the cautionary information that they give you about lightning strikes. A lot of people's tendency is to run under a tree to stay dry or something, or, obviously that's the wrong thing to do. Lightning, that's the thing. It tends to hit what's sticking up the most, which is amazing that it didn't hit me, in that even though I was sitting in my pontoon, I was probably 3 feet above the water, but it chose to take a detour and go a little bit, 7, 8 feet away from me.
I mean, I do love a good thunderstorm when I'm inside my house, and you're sleeping and you kind of hear the rumble and you're like, oh, wow. But I have to be completely honest. That's like my biggest fear, is the idea of being in the water and then being kind of stuck in a storm.
I've been in other ones too, where, drift boats have gotten hit, and the guide gets in and says he feels like an electrical pulse in the oars from where the boat got hit.
Now, Ron, we were just talking about this, and normally I would never even ask anyone of their age. But we were just talking earlier that you kind of got into fly fishing much later in life than somebody who kind of was like, hey, I was born at 3 years old with a rod in my hand and a worm on the other. That is not the case for you. If you don't mind kind of sharing, how long ago did you start fly fishing? And if, age?
My wife and I moved to Bend, Oregon, April of 2012, and 10 days later, I went into a fly shop and asked about fly fishing, if I could go out, get a guide. I didn't know even what a guide really was. And I did go out, and that day I decided that this spoke to me. I just loved being outdoors. I was a backpacker as a kid. I was backpacking in Yosemite, when I was 16. And I never really thought much about fishing, other than through the years. Interestingly enough, I'd sort of collected little items that were related to fly fishing. I have like Muriel Foster's fly fishing diary and a couple odds and ends laying around my office or the house. So there was something about it that was magnetic for me, but I didn't know that until I did it. And when I did, I was 58 years old.
Because to be honest, I don't know if I would have gotten into fly fishing if it hadn't been for my husband, who also happens to be a guide on the side. And it's an intimidating sport, to be honest. I mean, in the beginning, when my husband was like, here's your rod, and I was like, you got to take the line, you got to loop it, you got to learn some new, it's like learning how to tie your shoe. You're like, I got to learn what kind of knot, and if you want to add a loop to loop. And it can be very intimidating. And I just finally feel, and I've been fly fishing now, not for the amount of days that you have, but I can feel confident that I can grab my rod and put a fly on and go fishing by myself. But it's taken a long time to get to that place where I'm like, I'm going to go fishing today, and I don't need Justin behind me telling me what to do.
Well, I think, you bring up a really good point, and that's part of kind of what I was hitting on in that article that I sent you that I'm sort of writing, which kind of led to this podcast today. is that there are so many skills involved. You think it's just as simple as, yeah, get a rod, tie on a fly. Well, but then you got to obviously know where to fish, how to fish it, what fly to use, what line to use, what rod to use, how do you net the fish, how do you release it safely, how do you wade, how do you, how do you do everything? There's like 50 skills involved. It can be very intimidating unless you're really excited about moving forward and kind of accelerating the learning curve, which I was, but just due to my age, really, I just wanted to get proficient. I didn't like the feeling of somebody you're fishing with a friend or something, and they said, yeah, I'm using a copper john. And I look in my box and I'm like, what is a copper john?
I'm curious, what do you feel is the hardest thing to learn about fly fishing? For me, it's setting the hook. That can be the most irritating thing for me with fly fishing, is setting the hook. And I'm still getting the hang of it, but that for me was the hardest thing with fly fishing. So what was your hardest part of learning how to fly fish later in life?
I think that's a great question. I would say the thing that gave me the most trouble, I would say you're right about that. Setting the hook is interesting because different fish in different places, you have to set it differently, right?
Right.
Like I notice a lot of times when I fish new water, I'll miss like the first few fish, right? Till you kind of get the hang of how they take it, right? But that being said, the thing that gave me the most frustration, because I fish year-round, was winter fishing. My first 2 or 3 winters of fishing, and that was in Bend, not in Bozeman, where I am now. I would come home and say, 0, 0, 0. and then, fishing the Metolius in the winter, that'll get you to be a good angler, a good nympher, and occasionally you'll get a blue wing hatch at noon and get some great dry fly action on those days that are over 40 degrees. But I'd say the winter fishing gave me the most frustration, ultimately.
Can I be honest with you, Ron? I think winter fishing would give me difficulty, but I don't winter fish.
Right. A lot of people don't. But, for those that do, obviously a lot less people. And the opportunity is tremendous if you know what you're doing and where to go. I've had some of my best days in the winter. And, I'm all for everybody fishing, but it's just nice to have less of a crowd.
Oh, absolutely. I know we were talking about the 1,000 days of fly fishing, and
Right.
I also want to learn more about, you said that you kind of do a way of tracking it. Because I think if you actually think, 3 years, and you're like, no, 3 years, think about it, like 3 years of fly fishing every day.
I know.
I think I even read somewhere that if you can do something 100 times,
Right.
you're considered an expert. So I have a couple of questions, but how are you keeping count of your 1,000 days of fly fishing?
Well, 2 things. One is, I think I mentioned to you earlier, is that I don't really count the fish. I learned that what's more important for me is counting the days of fishing. But
Yes.
the way the system set itself up, or the way I set it up, is I have a desk calendar in my office at home. And what I do is I put a circle on a day where I'm going to fish. Like if I have plans, or if myself or with somebody else, so I put a circle on there, let's say for tomorrow. And the circle means it's a fishing day, and I'll write down where I'm going to go, where I'm planning on going. But just for superstitious reasons, I don't fill in the number until I get back. Because I've noticed that whenever I fill the number in before, the day gets canceled or something happens. So the way it works is that way my wife can see what my plans are in advance, because I have a lot of plans in advance. As a matter of fact, I'm fishing with your husband a couple of days.
Yes.
In April, we're going to go do the Bitterroot and the Clark Fork. And I have planning a trip to New Zealand for next January, and I'm doing the Smith River in May. So I have stuff, and I'm not saying fishing is the priority, but I just have to keep it organized so that my wife doesn't make plans, so that we're in sync in life. At the end of the year, when December 31st comes, I've carried the number over every month. So I see 110, 105, 98, 115, and I take out all my calendars because I keep them with my taxes, and I add them up.
How many days are you on right now?
Oh, gosh. I was hoping you weren't going to ask because I'm really light. This year's the lightest year I've had so far because we moved. And we've also just come out of that thermonuclear blast here in Montana. And I just became a grandfather. So I was in Texas for their thermonuclear blast for 10 days. So I'm really light this year. I mean, this year I've probably only fished maybe 10 days. But trust me, by the time December 31st comes, it will be over 100.
Over 1,000, over 100, or over 1,000?
Well, over 100 for the year. And,
for the year, yes.
And over 1,000 in April will be 9 years. So, it's really not that crazy if you think about 9 years at call it 110 days a year. I guess that's not that crazy.
And now a brief message from our sponsors. FlyLab Reels provides silky smooth disc drags at a click-and-pull price. Paired with mid-arbor spool for quick line retrieval, the FlyLab family of fishing reels is the best value on the river. With 4 models to choose from, priced from $99 to $249, you won't find these reels anywhere other than the local CD dealer or at cd-fishing.us. And remember to go fishing.
Another question, because like we said earlier, they say if you do something 100 times, you're considered kind of like getting to the expert level.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it did take, when did you feel that after 85 out of 100, or do you feel like you're at that expert level?
No, not at all, really. Embarrassingly enough, I can't even double haul yet.
Me neither.
And I'm a drummer. I'm an ex-drummer from my music days. And you think that would be like the easiest thing for me to do. And everybody, all my friends that I fish would say, oh, I can teach you that in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But the thing is, no one ever does.
The double haul is really hard, though. I find that one to be like the most. Justin and I were in the backyard, and he comes behind me and he starts doing it, and I'm like, I don't know, are my hands supposed to meet together and then go apart? And then when does a double one before the other one comes forward? I'm still wrapping my head around that double haul.
I think it's like riding a bike. You start explaining it to someone, it's too much information. You got to get on the bike and ride. Once you feel it, that's it. You can ride a bike. And I think this is the same way, but I just don't dedicate myself to it because I can single haul, and I do have instances where it would be nice to get that extra distance, but I'm surviving without it, but I do want to learn it.
I completely agree with you. I told Justin, I was like, well, the fish don't know what I'm doing up above here. Right. So as long as it lands where it's supposed to land and the line is clean, I'm still going to be able to catch fish. And
as far as being an expert, I am definitely do not feel that I'm an expert. I feel that I'm, a very good angler, competent angler. I feel like there's always so much to learn. There's very few people, if any, who really know it all. But I just feel like, time on the water, the experience is what makes you better. And the learning in fly fishing is so incremental. You can't measure it, in days or hours. It's just something that accumulates like knowledge. And then you apply it when it's necessary, and hopefully you get success from that. I mean, it's just about experience. That's what I think.
Agreed. And I don't think anyone can, I think you can be a really great angler, but there's always new things that are coming out with fly fishing. Like the Euro nymphing is a huge thing right now. And, even the spay cast. And if you can probably become pretty familiar with your area and your zone, and that's where you maybe can be a better expert in. But with fly fishing, I don't think you can be an expert unless you can be on a river all the time, on the ocean, in the Deschutes, like different areas and lakes. There's so many different ways to challenge yourself as a fly angler, which is super exciting.
And I do love Euro nymphing. I have to tell you that.
What do you like about it? I'm just curious. I haven't done it before, so I'm kind of curious what the craze is all about.
First of all, it's a very efficient way to nymph. You're really getting those flies down on the bottom where the fish tend to be sitting. But what I've noticed is that myself and even others tend to start doing it in waters that are not necessarily appropriate for it, right? I think they say do it in like 1 to 4 feet of water, kind of slow to medium speed. But I see, being done all the time. And I guess it works. And then I have friends and people who say that's not even fly fishing, the purists, because, they just want to throw a dry fly out there. I have a little bit of that in me. Of course, everybody wants to see the rising fish take the fly, right?
Right.
But, until that moment presents itself that day or not, you want to stay active and you want to be connecting with the fish, and Euro nymphing is a great way to do it. I mean, when I switched from indicator nymphing to Euro nymphing, I mean, there's no comparison. The numbers it's just ridiculous. Once you get it.
With the Euro nymphing?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Well, and especially with winter fishing, that'd be a lot more fun, right? Because, then you're actually going to maybe make those numbers a little bit higher. I know you were just saying about how you had, in your past, your music, and we had discussed earlier. I'm super excited about talking to you about this as much as I am about fishing. But you were a music talent agent for Devo, Motley Crue, and Kenny G, which is such an amazing different group of people. These are all on my music playlist. Tell me, how was it? How did you get into this profession, and how was it working with these group of people?
Well, I grew up as a musician. I grew up in New York. My dad was a songwriter, and so I grew up in a music environment. And I was a drummer starting at age 8, played until I was 20, and always thought that I would be a professional drummer, but ended up not doing that just because I kind of thought to myself, if that doesn't work out, I'm going to end up playing drums on a cruise ship, or something, and that's going to be my worst nightmare, And it's sort of like a kid who's a great basketball player in the driveway, dreaming about being in the NBA. I mean,
oh yeah, that was totally me.
There's a 1/100th of a chance that you'll get to that level, and I guess I kind of got scared of that, and so I kind of bailed. And actually, to continue the music theme, I went to work on that game show, Name That Tune. I was a production assistant on that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
love that.
Yeah, and that show's coming back, I see. But anyway, so one thing led to another, and after that, I decided that the best use of my talent and what I'm interested in, that being a music talent agent would be the way to go. So I pursued that, and I got hired by the William Morris Agency in Beverly Hills in 1979 and worked there all the way through the 80s, and then, started at another place after that, and then ended that career. But yeah, so yeah, Motley Crue, Devo, Warren Zevon. I mean, I had a bunch of clients, had a great time. I'm a pretty organized person, so being a talent agent kind of suits me in that I kind of have an ear for music, so I was good about that, finding talent, and then booking tours. That's what you do,
Okay, so real quick, because they did that whole thing with Motley Crue, the documentary series.
Right.
Were they hard to work with? Were you like, okay, I need to talk to Kenny G as soon as I get done with Motley Crue? Got to get me some jazz. Were they that awful?
Yeah, well, what's funny about that is that, I wasn't as connected with them as the managers. The agent's kind of a little bit on the perimeter of things. We take our marching orders from the manager. But I did obviously meet the clients, but I wasn't like hanging out with them per se, unless I was at a show backstage just to say hello. But the managers are the ones who really have the tight relationship. As an agent, I was just there to facilitate their tours and things like that. But they are, in general, very nice people. Different, of course.
Were there some rumors that they were crazy, though? You were like, prepare yourself for that group.
Well, to give you an example, just a quick example, is that I was a friend of mine represented the writer who wrote that script that you're referring to, and it's just escaping me the name of that. The documentary on Motley Crue. But in any case, he sent it to me, and The Dirt, that's what it was called, right? The Dirt.
Okay.
And he sent me the script and said, would you look this over and tell me what you think? Is this stuff accurate? And I kind of read it, and I don't remember anything because it was so long ago. But the tone of it was accurate. I don't remember each individual craziness, but the tone was there. Yeah, it was wild.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so great. And you said your dad was a writer. Did he have any hits that we'd know about?
Oh, he wrote a bunch of stuff, but you know the audience is probably so young on your show that they probably don't remember. But if I just throw out one that I know that everybody remembers, and that was that he was a co-writer of the theme to "I Dream of Jeannie," the TV show.
Oh, yes. Oh,
But he
see?
had hits from 1946 to 1985, literally from like Frank Sinatra to Barry Manilow. And he had like a 40, 50-year career.
Wow, that is so incredible. Well, I love Ian Tyson. I love some good
Yep.
old school
Uh-huh.
music and
Yep.
George Jones. And
Yep. Yeah.
sometimes you kind of get missing out on those old songs and kind of just the general tone of a storytelling. That's how music was back then. It was a very good storytelling. And
Yep.
now I still like this music now, but sometimes I get kind of lost in like what the actual story is about. But
It's a little different.
totally, absolutely. So, Ron, I know we did talk about one of the most terrifying moments you had on the water. I'd love to hear maybe one. You've sent me some photos of some incredible catches. Is there one in your past that kind of sticks out the most?
Well, boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I would have to say that picture I sent you, I was actually using a Winston spey rod, and I was swinging in Alaska, swinging a leech on the Newshigak River, and that 25-pound king salmon latched on, and I had to run down the beach about a half a mile to land him.
Wow.
That was fun.
Yes, yes. And this was in Alaska?
Yeah, that was in Alaska on the Newshigak River. Yep.
Oh my gosh. When you picked it up, like, did you know right when you had
Well,
set the hook that it was gonna be that large?
the guide had to help me pick it up, and to hold it out in front of you, it's a lot of weight, a lot of dead weight. Although he wasn't dead, and he got released safely. But he told me it was about 25 plus pounds. I did catch a 45 pounder on that trip, but it was from a boat and it was with gear. Took an hour to land almost.
Oh my gosh, were you exhausted afterwards?
Well, I'll tell you something. I was so exhausted that the last 5 minutes I handed the rod to my friend because my back had completely gone out.
I wonder how much money you're having to spend to go back home and get like massages and all this stuff, like PT stuff to help you out with your 1,000 days of fly fishing.
Well, the truth of the matter is the therapeutic part for me mentally is really been a savior because it really puts me in a place where I can just relax. And I think I might have said to you, and I kind of say this over and over, is that I found that fly fishing to me was the only thing in life that was relaxing and challenging at the same time. And that's a very unusual combination, because I play golf.
100.
And let me tell you something, there's nothing relaxing about that.
Yeah, I have to be completely honest. I've tried golf a couple times and I keep looking forward to the last hole because I'm so bad at it. It's so frustrating. So with your adventures of doing this fly fishing count, are you looking at places to go that are different, or is there a bucket list that you have that you're like, okay, this needs to be in
Yep.
my 1,000 days?
There is a bucket list for sure. I mean, last year I went to Argentina in January and I fished Jurassic Lake, Strobel Lake, but the nickname is Jurassic Lake. That's kind of a legendary fishery. I mean, it's at the tip of South America. It took 50 hours to get there, overnighting at a hotel somewhere and 5 flights. But we got there and the fishing was incredible. I mean, when you're fishing for wild rainbows that are averaging 8 pounds, and you're catching 10 to 20 a day, and some of them are 12 and 13 pounds, it's unbelievable. That was on my list. The Smith River coming up has been on my bucket list, and I'm looking forward to that. I did
Oh, you're going to go on the Smith River?
yeah,
Ah, jealous. Nicely done.
Middle Fork of the Salmon. I did the whole 100 miles from the top to the bottom. That was on the list. I've been to Patagonia twice, Alaska twice, Tasmania. As a matter of fact, I went there with Jeff Perrin. I've traveled with Jeff a few times. Went to Tasmania with him, as well as Chile twice, and they've all been fantastic trips. Yeah, I just try to stay away from like the jungle type stuff. I'm really not a jungle kind of person.
Spiders and snakes weird me out.
Well, I'm kind of a mountain. I like the lakes. I like the rivers, and I just love the beauty of the mountains.
I do not find myself wanting to go into the deep forest where we're going to have to like bushwhack and get into the woods. I mean, what was it? Ashley Judd almost lost her leg.
Right.
I don't know how she lost her leg, but I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be losing your... Well, you might get struck by lightning going to a lake, but I'd rather have my chances with that than seeing a spider or a snake and just too many bugs. I go to Wisconsin in the summertime. That's enough bugs I can handle in one outing.
It took me a long time, fishing the Deschutes as I did, for 7 years, 8 years. It took me a long time to get over the rattlesnake thing, but finally I did and realized that, you're not stepping on them every step of the way. They're there and you'll see one occasionally, but it's not so front and center as your fear might lead you to believe.
Yes, it's very true. But crazy story, don't be scared of rattlesnakes. But my sister-in-law, they went on a river trip and they went with another family, and this little boy that they were with kind of came up to her, and she's a pediatrician, thank goodness, but was like, "Hey, I think I got bit by a rattlesnake." And this, I don't know how old he was, but it was a champ. But they had to get him out of there, helicopter, and you kind of forget that, especially in Bend and kind of like the Deschutes area, you have a very desert climate that seems that rivers must be a hot spot for rattlesnakes.
Oh, it is. It's high desert, lots of rocks, lots of very warm days, and yes, those snakes, but they in general, they're not looking to fight with you. They just want their own space.
And I forgot to ask you this, Ron. What made you decide to leave Bend for Bozeman?
Well, we've been in Bend about 8 years. We bought in 2010, moved there in 12. I just felt like, I don't know, we just kind of felt like it. We visited Bozeman a few times and kind of liked it a lot. And Bend's getting a little bit crowded, although it's still a wonderful place. And of course, people say Bozeman's getting crowded, but Bozeman proper is 50,000, 53,000, and Bend proper is like 103,000. So it's got a little bit of a different feel. And, life's an adventure. Our kids are all grown and we have the flexibility. And so we did it.
I love that you're actually picking up new hobbies, leaving your home and checking out new places to meet new people. And like I said, I mean, you're new in the valley and maybe someone wants to go fishing with you. Maybe how would they reach you to kind of have a new fishing buddy in the Bozeman area?
Boy, wouldn't that be great if I could meet one or two of the perfect fishing buddies who have freedom, flexibility, and a sense of adventure and want to go camping, because I left all those guys behind.
Yeah, what's your Instagram and email account?
My Instagram is RK, my initials, Ron Kaye, RK Trout Bum. Pretty simple.
Awesome. And what's the email?
My name, Ron Kaye, RONKAYE @gmail.com.
Okay, at gmail.com. Yeah. Well, and you can be part of the 1,000 days of fly fishing, which you are going to be turning into a book, which you've kind of written a couple of pages already. And I have to say, it's so exciting, and to be part of that adventure would be kind of a fun way to live forever.
Well, I feel like I'm in the right place, and the right person will turn up, the right people will turn up. You don't need 100 people to fish with, but if you could find a couple of 2, 3 great people who just, kind of have the same passion as I do, and hopefully they're even better than I do so I can learn from them. That's the key.
Well, it also helps with shuttle driving, right?
That helps.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.